The little girl's lips were pale, frozen. That was the first thing Daniel noticed when he looked up from his phone, the unnatural color spreading across her small mouth as she stood motionless outside the cafe window, not crying, not calling out, just standing there in the bitter December wind, watching people pass by as if she were part of the street furniture. He almost looked away, almost went back to scrolling through emails that could wait until morning, almost finished his coffee and walked out into the night like the dozens of others who had already passed her without slowing. Almost. But something about the way she held herself, perfectly still, hands tucked into sleeves that hung past her fingertips, shoulders pulled tight against the cold, made him pause. The stranger noticed her by accident. Daniel was halfway through his third cup of coffee, nursing the last of the warmth, already late for a meeting he'd been avoiding. The cafe was his usual refuge on nights when home felt too quiet, when work felt too loud, when the space between felt impossible to navigate. He'd chosen this table precisely because it faced away from the window, away from the street, away from the constant stream of humanity that reminded him how disconnected he'd become. But he'd needed the restroom, and on the way back, he'd glanced through the glass. That's when he saw her. A small figure in a pink jacket that had seen better winters, sneakers, not boots, darkened with moisture from the slush. Hair pulled into careful pigtails, one slightly higher than the other, as if someone had tried very hard in limited time. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Daniel froze mid-step. A woman brushed past the girl without looking. A man in a business suit checked his watch as he walked by, phone pressed to his ear. A teenager with headphones didn't even register her presence. The girl watched them all with wide, patient eyes. Then, as if sensing his stare, she turned her head. Their eyes met through the glass. She didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't ask for anything. She just looked at him with an expression that was far too old for her face, an expression that said she already knew what would happen next. He would look away. Everyone did. Daniel's hand tightened around his coffee cup. He thought about his sister's words from years ago, during their last real conversation before the silence stretched too long between them. You see everything, Danny. You always have. You just stop letting yourself care. He'd been angry then. Defensive. He'd told her she didn't understand his life, his responsibilities, his reasons for keeping distance. But standing there in a cafe on a Thursday night, looking at a little girl with blue lips and patient eyes, he wondered if maybe she'd been right. The girl turned away first, looking back down the darkened street, as if searching for something that wasn't coming. Daniel set down his cup. His phone buzzed. Another email, another demand, another reason to stay inside where it was warm and safe and uncomplicated. He silenced it. Then he grabbed his coat and walked toward the door. "Hi there," he said softly. The girl looked up at him, evaluating. Her cheeks were flushed red from the cold, making the blue of her lips stand out even more. "Hi," she whispered. Her voice was so small, so careful. "I'm Daniel," he said. "What's your name?" She hesitated, glancing toward the cafe window as if checking whether the rules applied here, outside, where the warm people couldn't hear. Sophie," she said finally. "Hi, Sophie. That's a beautiful name." She didn't respond to the compliment. Instead, she said something that made Daniel's chest constrict. "You don't have to stay. It's okay. My mama says people have their own things." The words came out practiced, rehearsed, a script she'd learned to protect the adults around her from their own discomfort. Daniel sat down fully on the cold sidewalk, ignoring the dampness seeping through his pants. "Well," he said, "right now my thing is making sure you're not standing out here alone in the cold. Is that okay?" Sophie looked confused by the question, as if the concept of her comfort being anyone's priority was foreign. "I guess," she said. "Are you waiting for someone?" Daniel asked. Sophie nodded. "My mama. She's working." "Where does she work?" Sophie pointed down the street toward a cluster of office buildings, their windows dark except for the occasional glow of cleaning crews working through the night. "She cleans the big buildings," Sophie said. "She says they're prettier when they're empty, says the people who work there during the day are messy." Daniel smiled, despite the heaviness settling in his stomach. "I bet she's right about that." "She's right about lots of things," Sophie said. "It wasn't defensive, just factual. I'm sure she is." "Are you married?" Sophie asked suddenly. The question caught Daniel off guard. "No. Why do you ask?" "My mama says married people don't notice things as much," Sophie said, "because they're looking at each other." Daniel wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Your mama sounds very thoughtful," he said carefully. Sophie nodded, then quietly, "She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." The confession hung in the air between them. Daniel wanted to ask more, wanted to understand, but he also knew that this little girl had probably already shared more than she was supposed to, and pushing might close the door she'd cracked open. "How long have you been waiting out here, Sophie?" he asked instead. She shrugged, the movement making her look even smaller. "I don't know." "A while? Is your mama usually late?" "Sometimes the buses don't come on time, and sometimes she has to do extra rooms." "Extra rooms? When someone gets sick or doesn't show up?" "Mama never doesn't show up. She says that's important." Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. This child understood work ethic better than most adults he knew. "Your mama's right about that too," he said. But Sophie, do you come out here and wait often?" Sophie looked down at her sneakers, now completely soaked through. "Only when she has to work late," she said. "Our neighbor watches me most nights. Mrs. Chen, she's nice. She makes me dumplings. But not tonight." Sophie shook her head. "Mrs. Chen's daughter had a baby. She went to help. And your mama couldn't find anyone else." Sophie's voice got smaller. "There isn't really anyone else." 4 words that contained entire worlds of isolation. Daniel stood slowly, offering his hand. "Sophie, would you come inside with me? Just to warm up. We can watch for your mama through the window." Sophie looked at his hand like it was a test. "My mama says not to go places with strangers," she said. "That's a very good rule," Daniel said. "Your mama is smart to teach you that. But what if we just stand right inside the door? You can see the street, and the cafe people can see us. Would that be okay?" Sophie considered this with the seriousness of someone making a much bigger decision. "Okay," she said finally. "But just inside the door." "Just inside the door," Daniel agreed. Her hand, when she took his, was ice cold. The cafe staff didn't look up when they entered. That was the part that Daniel would remember later. The casual indifference of the barista wiping down counters. The couple in the corner too absorbed in each other to notice. The man with his laptop and noise-cancelling headphones creating his own private world. No one saw a soaking wet 5-year-old and thought, something is wrong here. They stood just inside the door as promised. Heat from the cafe wrapped around them like a blanket, and Sophie's whole body seemed to sag with relief. "Oh," she breathed, "it's so warm." She said it like someone discovering water in a desert. Daniel's coat was still in his hand. He'd grabbed it on the way out but hadn't put it on. Now he knelt again, spreading it on the floor. "Here," he said. "Stand on this. Get your feet off the cold floor." Sophie stared at the expensive wool coat, then at him. "But it's your coat," she said. "It'll get dirty." "Coats can be cleaned," Daniel said. "Feet can't be warmed up once they get too cold. Come on." Slowly, Sophie stepped onto the coat. She wiggled her toes, and Daniel saw her sneakers were even worse than he'd thought, worn thin, with holes near the soles. "Better?" he asked. Sophie nodded, but she was shivering now. The violent kind of shaking that comes when a body realizes it's finally somewhere safe enough to stop holding it together. "Stay here 1 second," Daniel said. He walked to the counter. The barista looked up with the bored expression of someone deep into a night shift. "Can I get a small hot chocolate?" Daniel said. "Extra hot, extra marshmallows." The barista rang it up without comment, and Daniel pulled out his wallet. As he waited, he glanced back at Sophie. She was still standing exactly where he'd left her, on top of his coat, watching the street through the glass. Waiting, always waiting. When the hot chocolate came, Daniel added a packet of honey from the condiment station, something his mother used to do when he and his sister were small and cold from playing in the snow. He brought it back to Sophie, wrapping her small hands around the warm cup. "Careful," he said. "It's hot. Let it cool for a minute." Sophie held the cup like it was precious, like it might disappear if she didn't hold on tight enough. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome." They stood together in silence, watching the street. A few minutes passed. Sophie's shivering began to slow. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. Sophie nodded. "How often does your mama work at night?" "Almost every day. She says she's trying to save up. Save up for what? A better place. She says the apartment we're in now has mice, and the heat doesn't work good. She says if she can save enough, we can move somewhere with a playground." Sophie said it wistfully, like other children might talk about Disneyland. "Do you like playgrounds?" Daniel asked. Sophie's face lit up, the first real expression of joy he'd seen. "I love them," she said. "But there's one at school, but we can only use it at recess, and there's one at the park, but Mama says it's too far to walk when she's tired." Sophie took a tiny sip of hot chocolate, testing the temperature. She must have decided it was okay because she took a longer drink, closing her eyes. "This is the best thing I've ever tasted," she said. Daniel doubted that was true, but the fact that she believed it made his throat tight. "Sophie," he said carefully, "does your mama know you wait outside?" Sophie nodded. "She tells me to wait by Mrs. Chen's door, in the hallway, but Mrs. Chen isn't home, and the hallway is dark at night. And sometimes there are loud people in the building, so I came here instead." "Does your mama know you came here?" Sophie looked guilty. "No, I'll tell her. She won't be mad. She doesn't get mad. She just gets scared." "Scared of what?" Sophie's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "That someone will take me away." The words hit Daniel like a physical blow. "Has someone tried to take you away?" he asked, keeping his voice level despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. "No," Sophie said, "but Mama says there are people who think they know better, who think she's not doing it right. She says if those people find out she has to leave me alone sometimes, they might decide I need a different Mama." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. "Sophie, your Mama loves you very much, doesn't she?" Sophie nodded fiercely. "She loves me the most in the whole world." "I can tell," Daniel said, "and I bet she's doing the very best she can." "She is," Sophie said. "She works really hard. Sometimes she's so tired she falls asleep sitting up. But she always makes sure I eat, and she reads to me every night, even when she's tired. We're reading Charlotte's Web right now. Do you know it?" "I do," Daniel said. "It's a beautiful story. Mama cries at the end every time, even though we've read it 3 times already." Daniel smiled despite everything. "It's that kind of story." They fell quiet again. Sophie finished half her hot chocolate, then held the cup close to her face, letting the steam warm her cheeks. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course. I don't really mind waiting," Sophie said. "I know Mama feels bad about it, but I don't mind. It's quiet, and I get to think about things, like what I want to be when I grow up, or what I'll name my dog if I ever get one." "What would you name your dog?" "Marshmallow," Sophie said immediately. "Oh, because he'd be white and fluffy and sweet. That's a perfect name." Sophie smiled, then caught herself as if remembering something. "Mama says I talk too much sometimes," she said. "I'm sorry." Daniel felt that crack in his chest widen. "Sophie, listen to me," he said, crouching down to her level. "You don't talk too much, and you don't need to apologize for existing. Okay?" Sophie looked confused, like this was a foreign concept. "Okay," she said uncertainly. "I'm serious. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be seen. You're allowed to be 5 years old and need things. That's not asking too much. That's just being human." Sophie stared at him with those two old eyes. "Are you sure?" she asked. "And I'm absolutely sure." She seemed to consider this. Then, quietly, "I wish more people thought like you." Before Daniel could respond, Sophie stiffened. That's her," she said suddenly, pressing against the glass. Daniel followed her gaze. A woman was running down the sidewalk, actually running, her breath visible in the cold air. She wore thin scrubs under an even thinner jacket, and her hair had partially escaped from a ponytail. Her face was twisted with panic. Sophie grabbed Daniel's hand, the hot chocolate forgotten. "She's scared," Sophie whispered. "I don't want her to be scared." "It's okay," Daniel said. "And let's go meet her." They stepped outside together, and the moment the woman saw Sophie, she let out a sound that was half sob, half relief. "Sophie!" she cried, dropping to her knees on the wet sidewalk and pulling the little girl into her arms. "Oh my God, Sophie, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." She was checking Sophie frantically, hands, face, feet, as if making sure every piece was still there. "The bus broke down," she gasped, "and my phone died. And I ran the whole way." "It's okay, Mama," Sophie said, patting her mother's shoulder with the practiced comfort of someone who'd done this before. "I was inside. It was warm, and Daniel gave me hot chocolate." The woman's eyes snapped to Daniel then, and he saw fear flash across her face, the instinctive terror of a mother finding her child with a strange man. "I'm Daniel," he said quickly, taking a step back to give her space. "I saw Sophie outside. I just wanted to make sure she was warm. We stayed right inside the door. She could see the street the whole time." The woman was still holding Sophie tight, but her expression had shifted from panic to something more complicated. Gratitude mixed with shame, mixed with exhaustion. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. I thought Mrs. Chen—" "It's okay," Daniel said. "And she's safe." The woman, Sophie's mama, stood slowly, still holding Sophie's hand like a lifeline. She was younger than Daniel had expected, maybe late 20s, pretty, despite the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "I'm Rachel," she said. "Sophie's mom." "Daniel," he repeated. "It's nice to meet you. Sophie's been telling me about Charlotte's Web." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "She tells everyone about that book," she said, voice breaking. Then, to Sophie, "Baby, you can't just come to places alone. You scared me so much." "I'm sorry, Mama," Sophie said, "but the hallway was dark, and you always say this street is safe." Rachel closed her eyes, and Daniel could see her fighting to hold it together. "She's okay," he said gently. "Really, she's a very smart girl." "Too smart," Rachel whispered. "She shouldn't have to be this smart." The three of them stood there on the sidewalk, Daniel, Rachel, and Sophie, forming a small island in the stream of people who continued to flow past without looking. "I should let you go," Daniel said finally. Rachel nodded, but she looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Before you do," she said, her voice shaking, "can I ask, was she outside long?" Daniel chose his words carefully. "Long enough that I noticed," he said. "Not long enough for anything bad to happen." Rachel understood what he wasn't saying. Her breath hitched. "Thank you," she said again. "Really, I don't know what I would have if something had—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Sophie, sensing her mother's distress, hugged her legs. "It's okay, Mama," she said. "Nothing bad happened." Daniel made sure. Rachel wiped her eyes roughly. "We should go," she said. "Sophie needs sleep. School tomorrow." "Of course," Daniel said. He started to turn away, but Sophie's voice stopped him. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she asked. Daniel looked at Rachel first, asking permission. Rachel gave a small nod. "I don't usually come here," Daniel said honestly. "I was just here tonight by accident." Sophie's face fell. "Oh, but," Daniel added, surprising himself, "I think I might start coming here more often. Thursday nights, maybe?" Sophie brightened. "Really? Really?" Rachel was watching him with that complicated expression again, grateful, but also wary, as if waiting for the other shoe to drop. Daniel reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card. He'd done this before, handed out cards at networking events and conferences, but never had it felt this important. "Here," he said, offering it to Rachel. "Just in case. If you ever need anything. Or if—" He gestured vaguely, unable to find words for what he meant. Rachel took the card with shaking hands. Her eyes widened as she read it. "This is your—" she stammered. "I run operations for a development company," Daniel said. "We're always looking for good people, reliable people." "I don't have any experience in development," Rachel said quickly. "I clean offices. That's all I've ever—" Daniel held up a hand gently. "We have lots of positions," he said. "Not just development, administration, maintenance, property management, and honestly, someone who can raise a kid like Sophie while working nights and still making sure her hair is combed. That's someone who knows how to manage impossible situations." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. "I can't," she whispered. "This is— Just think about it," Daniel said. "No pressure, but if you want to talk, call me or email. Whatever works." Rachel looked at the card, then at Sophie, then back at Daniel. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. It was a fair question. Daniel thought about his sister, about the years of silence, about all the times he'd walked past people who needed help because it was easier than stopping, because getting involved meant caring, and caring meant risk, because someone should have stopped for me once, he said quietly. And no one did. "And I don't want to be that person anymore." Rachel's tears spilled over then. "Thank you," she whispered. Sophie, not fully understanding but sensing the moment's importance, hugged Daniel's leg. "Bye, Daniel," she said. "I hope I see you on Thursday." "Me too, Sophie." Rachel took Sophie's hand, and together they walked down the street. Daniel watched until they turned a corner and disappeared from sight. Then he stood there on the cold sidewalk, hands in his pockets, thinking about blue lips and patient eyes and a little girl who'd learned to be invisible. His phone buzzed. Another email, another meeting, another piece of the life he'd built that suddenly felt hollower than it had that morning. He silenced it again. Then he walked back into the cafe, bought another coffee, and sat down at the table by the window. He had some calls to make. Daniel didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., he opened his email and started typing, "To Jennifer, Martinez Amiradev, from Daniel, Foster Amiradev, subject, employment referral, high priority. Jen, I met someone tonight who needs a job, single mother, currently working night shift cleaning offices, reliable, responsible, raising a 5-year-old alone. No relevant experience in development, but shows resourcefulness and dedication. Can we find something? Admin, property management, even entry level. Needs day shift. Needs stability. This is important to me." Daniel, he hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he opened a new message. "To Sarah, Foster Agmail, from Daniel, Foster Amiradev, subject. I think I understand now, Sarah. Remember when you said I'd stopped letting myself care? You were right. I'm sorry it took me this long to admit it. I met a little girl tonight, 5 years old, standing outside in the cold, waiting for her mom. And I almost walked past her, almost convinced myself it wasn't my problem. But I didn't. And now I can't stop thinking about how many times I have walked past. How many people I've decided weren't my responsibility. I don't know how to fix the past, but maybe I can do better going forward. I miss you. I'm sorry for the silence. Can we talk? Danny. He hesitated over that one longer. He and Sarah hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, not since their father's funeral, where they'd stood on opposite sides of the grave and barely made eye contact. But Sophie's voice kept echoing in his head. There isn't really anyone else. Daniel knew what it was like to have no one else, knew what it felt like to be alone in a room full of people. He'd chosen that isolation, built walls around himself brick by brick, telling himself it was easier this way. But easier wasn't the same as better. He hit send on that email too. Daniel woke up very early next morning, made fresh coffee and watched the sunrise through his kitchen window. Somewhere out there, Rachel was probably getting Sophie ready for school, helping her into whatever clothes she had, making sure she ate something, walking her to the bus stop or the school entrance, doing all the things parents do, just without any of the support systems that made it manageable. Daniel's phone buzzed. An email from Jennifer Martinez, sent at 5:47 a.m. Daniel, got your email. Unusual request, but if you're vouching for her, I trust your judgment. Have her come in Monday, 9 a.m. We have an opening in property management admin. Entry level but with benefits and room to grow. Day shift, salary details attached. Also, are you okay? You've never asked me for something like this before. Jen Daniel smiled and typed back, I think I might be more okay than I've been in a long time. Thank you. The second email was harder to read. Danny, I got your email at 4 a.m. and I've been staring at it for the past 2 hours trying to figure out what to say. I'm glad you stopped. I'm glad you noticed that little girl. That's the brother I remember, the one who saw people, who cared, who couldn't walk past someone who needed help. I missed him. Let's talk. Really talk. Saturday afternoon. Coffee. The good kind, not the corporate chain stuff. I missed you too. Sarah Daniels' eyes stung. He set the phone down and finished his coffee, watching the city wake up. Cars appearing on streets, lights turning on in windows, people beginning their days. Daniel decided then that he would be at that cafe on Thursday night, and maybe other nights too, not because he was trying to save anyone. He wasn't arrogant enough to think one person could solve systemic problems. Monday morning came with rain. Daniel arrived at his office early, coffee in hand, briefcase soaked from the short walk from parking to building. He was shaking out his umbrella when his assistant, Lauren, appeared with a concerned expression. You have someone waiting, she said. She's been here since 8:30. Daniel checked his watch. 8:47 a.m. Who? She wouldn't give her name. Just said you told her to come in today. She has a little girl with her. Daniel's heart jumped. Rachel, he said, send her in, please. Lauren nodded and disappeared. Daniel quickly shed his wet coat and tried to make his office look less like he'd just survived a monsoon. When the door opened, Rachel stepped in hesitantly, holding Sophie's hand. Both were wearing the same clothes from Thursday night, the thin jacket, the worn sneakers, and Daniel realized with a sinking feeling that they might be the only clothes they had for occasions like this. Sophie brightened when she saw him. Daniel, she said, then caught herself and looked at her mother for permission. Rachel nodded, and Sophie took a few steps forward. Hi, Sophie, Daniel said warmly. How was school last week? Good. We learned about butterflies. Did you know they can taste with their feet? Daniel smiled. I did not know that. That's amazing. Sophie beamed, and for a moment she looked exactly like what she was, a little girl excited about butterflies. Then Rachel cleared her throat. Mr. Foster, she said formally, I thank you for seeing us. I got your message about the interview. But she looked around the office, the expensive furniture, the view of the city, the framed credentials on the wall, and Daniel could see her shrinking. Please, sit, he said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. And it's just Daniel. Rachel sat on the edge of the chair like she might need to run at any moment. Sophie climbed into the chair beside her, sneakers dangling above the floor. I should explain, Rachel started. I didn't think, when you gave me your card, I thought maybe you were in HR or something. I didn't realize you were. She gestured helplessly at the office. Does it change anything? Daniel asked gently. Rachel looked at him with those exhausted eyes. It changes everything, she said. People like you don't help people like me. Not really. Not without wanting something back. It was brutally honest, and probably deserved. You're right to be cautious, Daniel said, but I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a job, if you're interested. If you're not, that's okay too. Rachel's hands twisted in her lap. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for someone you don't know? Sophie was listening intently, her eyes moving between the adults like she was watching a tennis match. Daniel thought about how to answer, about all the reasons that were true but might sound hollow. Finally, he said, "Because I spent a long time not noticing people, and I don't want to do that anymore. And because Sophie deserves to not wait in the cold, and because you deserve to not have to choose between paying rent and being home with your daughter." Rachel's eyes filled. "It's not that simple," she whispered. "I know," Daniel said, "but maybe it could be a little less complicated. That's all I'm offering." Rachel looked at Sophie, who was swinging her legs contentedly, humming softly to herself. "What's the job?" Rachel asked finally. "Property Management Administration," Daniel said. "You'd be working with Jennifer Martinez. She's the head of our property division. Mostly administrative work, scheduling repairs, handling tenant communications, managing paperwork. Nothing you couldn't learn. Day shift, 9 to 5. Benefits include health insurance, paid time off, and childcare assistance." Rachel's breath caught on that last part. "Childcare assistance? We partner with a center 2 blocks from here," Daniel said. "Subsidized rates for employees. Sophie would be close. You could have lunch with her if you wanted." Rachel covered her mouth with her hand. "I can't afford." "It's subsidized," Daniel repeated. "Sliding scale based on salary. For your position, it would be about $20 a week." Rachel stared at him. $20 a week, Daniel confirmed. "That's the whole point of the program. We need reliable employees. And people can't be reliable if they're worried about their kids." Sophie perked up. "Would there be other kids there?" "Lots of other kids," Daniel said. "I think they have a playground too." Sophie's eyes went wide. "And with swings?" "I think so, yeah." Sophie looked at her mother with such hope that Daniel had to look away. "Mama," she said, "can I go there, please?" Rachel was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. "I don't have," she started. "I don't have interview clothes, or a resume, or references. I didn't finish college. I worked retail before Sophie was born, then cleaning because it was the only thing with flexible hours after her dad." She stopped herself, glancing at Sophie. "After things changed," she finished quietly. Daniel leaned forward. "Rachel, listen to me. You showed up at 8:30 for a 9 a.m. interview. That means you got yourself and Sophie ready, probably took 2 buses to get here, and still arrived early. That tells me more than any resume could." "Hey, but you've been working night shifts for how long?" "Almost 3 years. And in those 3 years, how many shifts have you missed?" Rachel thought. 4. When Sophie had pneumonia and I couldn't leave her. 4 shifts in 3 years, Daniel repeated. "Most people in this building can't say that. That's not just reliability, that's dedication." Rachel wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I want to believe this is real," she whispered. "But I've learned that things that sound too good to be true usually are." "It's not too good to be true," Daniel said. "It's just a job, with a living wage and benefits. The kind of job everyone deserves, but most people don't get. You're not taking charity. You're accepting what should have been available to you all along." Sophie tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, I think you should try," she said softly. "Daniel seems nice, and I really want to see the playground." Rachel laughed through her tears and pulled Sophie close. "Okay," she said finally, looking at Daniel. "Okay. What do I need to do?" Jennifer Martinez was not what Rachel expected. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes and hands that moved expressively when she talked. Her office was smaller than Daniel's, but warmer. Photos of family everywhere, plants on the windowsill, a mug that said, "World's okayest boss." "Hi, Rachel," Jennifer said, standing to shake her hand. "I'm Jen, and you must be Sophie." Sophie nodded shyly. "Daniel told me you like butterflies," Jen said. Sophie's eyes widened. "He told you?" "He did. My daughter loves butterflies too. She's 7. Maybe you two could be friends." Sophie looked at her mother, then back at Jen, and smiled. Jen had arranged for one of the admin assistants, a young woman named Maya, to take Sophie to the break room for hot chocolate and coloring books while they talked. Sophie went willingly after getting her mother's permission, and Rachel watched her go with visible anxiety. "She'll be right down the hall," Jen said gently. "We can check on her any time you want." Rachel nodded and sat down in the chair across from Jen's desk. "So," Jen said, pulling out a folder, "Daniel gave me the basics, but I'd love to hear from you directly. Tell me about your work history." Rachel took a breath and began. She explained her retail job before Sophie was born, how she'd had to quit when childcare costs exceeded her paycheck, how she'd tried to make it work with Sophie's father, but he'd left when Sophie was 6 months old. "I started cleaning because it was nights," Rachel said, "and I could find neighbors to watch Sophie while she slept. It's not glamorous, but I'm good at it. I know how to manage time, how to prioritize, how to notice details." "Those are exactly the skills we need," Jen said. "Property management is all about details. Tenants call about everything from broken thermostats to noise complaints. You have to track multiple projects, communicate clearly, and stay calm under pressure." "I can do that," Rachel said. "I've been staying calm under pressure for 3 years." Jen smiled. "I believe you. Can I ask, what made you reach out to Daniel after he gave you his card?" Rachel hesitated. "Honestly, I almost didn't. I thought it was too good to be true. But then Sophie kept asking about him, about whether we'd see him again, and I realized she never asks about people like that. She's learned not to get attached because most people don't stay." Jen nodded slowly. "But Daniel stayed," Rachel continued. "He didn't have to. He could have walked past her like everyone else did, but he stopped, and he cared. And I thought, maybe if he's offering something real, I owe it to Sophie to at least try." "That's a good reason," Jen said. They talked for another 40 minutes. Jen explained the job in detail, the systems they used, the expectations, the learning curve. Rachel asked intelligent questions about procedures and protocols. By the end, Jen was smiling. "I'm going to be honest with you," Jen said. "This job isn't easy. Tenants can be difficult. Contractors can be unreliable. There will be days when everything goes wrong at once. But if you're willing to learn, if you can stay organized and communicate clearly, I think you'd be great at this." Rachel's hands were shaking. "So, you're offering me the job?" "I am," Jen said, "pending background check, which I'm assuming won't be a problem." "No," Rachel said quickly. "I've never even had a parking ticket." "Perfect. Then pending that formality, yes, the position is yours if you want it." Rachel covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Jen came around the desk and crouched beside her chair, offering tissues. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's a lot." "It's everything," Rachel whispered. "It's literally everything. I've been so scared every single day. Scared I'll lose my job. Scared Sophie will get sick and I won't be able to afford a doctor. Scared someone will see her waiting alone and call CPS. Scared that I'm failing her, even though I'm trying so hard." "You're not failing her," Jen said firmly. "You're surviving impossible circumstances. There's a difference." Rachel looked up, tears streaming. "How do you know?" Jen smiled sadly. "Because I was you. 12 years ago. Single mom, working 3 jobs, barely making rent. Someone gave me a chance, took a risk on me when no one else would. And it changed everything. So when Daniel called me at 3 a.m. asking for a favor, I didn't hesitate, because I remember what it feels like to be drowning, and I remember what it feels like when someone throws you a lifeline." Rachel stared at her. "Really? Really? And you know what? Now my daughter is in middle school and doing great. I have a job I love. I own my apartment. Things got better. Not perfect. Life is never perfect. But manageable, stable. And that's what I want to help you build." Rachel wiped her eyes. "When can I start? How much notice do you need to give your current employer?" "I don't have a contract. I could give them a week." "That works. Let's say 2 weeks from today. That gives you time to wrap things up, get Sophie settled in childcare, adjust to a new schedule. How does that sound?" "That sounds like a dream," Rachel whispered. Jen stood and extended her hand. "Welcome to the team, Rachel." Rachel stood and shook her hand, then impulsively hugged her. "Thank you," she said. Thank you so much." When they collected Sophie from the break room, the little girl had chocolate on her face and a drawing in her hand. "Mama, look, I drew a butterfly," Sophie said, holding up a picture that was more enthusiasm than accuracy. "It's beautiful, baby," Rachel said, kneeling to wipe the chocolate off Sophie's chin. "Maya says I can come back and draw more butterflies when you work here," Sophie said. "Are you going to work here?" Rachel looked at Jen, then at Sophie. "Yes, baby, I'm going to work here." Sophie threw her arms around her mother's neck. "Does that mean we can get an apartment with a playground?" Rachel laughed through fresh tears. "Maybe, sweetheart, maybe." As they were leaving, Daniel appeared in the hallway. He must have been waiting. "How'd it go?" he asked. "I got the job," Rachel said, her voice shaking. "I actually got it." Daniel smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I knew you would." Sophie ran to him and hugged his legs. "Thank you for helping my mama," she said. Daniel crouched down. "You're very welcome, Sophie. Are you excited about the childcare center?" "Very excited. Maya says they have a sandbox too." "I've never played in a real sandbox before." Something flickered across Daniel's face. Sadness, maybe, or recognition of how little it took to make this child happy. "Well, you're going to have a lot of fun," he said. As Rachel and Sophie headed toward the elevators, Daniel called out, "Rachel!" She turned. "If you need anything, rides, help with forms, anything, call me, okay?" Rachel nodded, too emotional to speak. When the elevator doors closed, Daniel stood in the hallway for a long moment. Jen appeared beside him. "You know you're not her savior, right?" she said quietly. "I know. You gave her an opportunity. That's all. What she does with it is up to her." "I know that too." Jen studied his face. "So why do you look terrified?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "Because what if she fails? What if I got her hopes up and she can't handle the job? What if Sophie gets her heart broken? Then you did what you could," Jen said, "and they'll figure out the next step. You can't protect everyone from every possible outcome, Daniel. You can only show up, which is exactly what you did." Daniel nodded, but the knot in his chest didn't loosen. He'd spent so long not caring, not getting involved, keeping everyone at arm's length. Now that he'd let himself care, the vulnerability felt overwhelming. Rachel's last 2 weeks at the cleaning company were harder than she expected. Meanwhile, Daniel kept appearing in unexpected ways. He texted her a link to a thrift store that specialized in work clothes. When Rachel went there, hesitant and embarrassed, she found a note at the counter with her name on it and a $100 store credit for getting started. Consider it a signing bonus. She cried in the fitting room, trying on blazers that actually fit, pants that didn't have holes, a simple dress that made her look professional. The woman running the store, an older lady named Gloria, helped her pick out outfits, offering advice without judgment. "You've got good bones, honey," Gloria said. "You'll look just fine." Rachel bought 3 outfits and a pair of proper shoes. Walking out of that store, she felt like a different person. Sophie noticed immediately. "Mama, you look pretty," she said when Rachel tried on the dress at home. "You think so? Really pretty, like a princess who works in an office." Rachel laughed and twirled for her daughter. For the first time in years, she felt something that wasn't exhaustion. She felt hope. Next day, she met Daniel in front of the office. He was waiting for her with a small box of chocolate and a good lucky card. Rachel's eyes filled. "Why are you being so kind to us?" Daniel thought about how to answer, about his sister's words, about all the years he'd walked past people who needed help. "Because someone should have been kind to me once," he said finally, "and no one was. And I don't want to keep passing that pain forward." Sophie tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Are you sad?" she asked. Daniel crouched down to her level. "Sometimes, Sophie. But seeing you and your mama do better makes me less sad. Does that make sense?" Sophie considered this seriously. Then she hugged him. "I think you're a good person," she said, "even when you're sad." Daniel's eyes stung. He hugged her back gently. Thank you, Sophie. That means a lot. As they were leaving, Rachel turned back. Daniel, thank you for everything. I promise I'll work hard. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Daniel said. But Rachel, even if you did, even if this job doesn't work out, you're still not a failure. You're still doing your best, and that matters. Rachel nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Monday morning arrived with sunshine. Rachel woke at 5 a.m. Even though she didn't need to be at work until 9, she couldn't sleep. Her stomach was in knots. She got Sophie ready first. Breakfast, clothes, teeth brushed, hair combed into neat pigtails. Then she put on one of her new outfits. Grey pants, a blue blouse, the blazer from the thrift store. Sophie watched from the doorway. "Mama, you look like someone on TV," she said. Rachel smiled nervously. "Is that good?" "It's really good. You look important." Important. When was the last time Rachel had felt important? They left early, taking 2 buses to get downtown. Rachel had practiced the route 3 times over the weekend, terrified of being late on her first day. The childcare center was bright and clean, with colorful murals on the walls and the sound of children laughing. A teacher named Miss Amy greeted them warmly. "You must be Sophie," Miss Amy said, crouching down. "We're so excited you're joining us. Would you like to see the classroom?" Sophie looked at her mother, uncertain. "It's okay, baby," Rachel said. "They'll be in the building right next door, and I'll come have lunch with you, okay? Promise. Promise." Sophie took Miss Amy's hand and let herself be led inside. At the last moment, she looked back. "Good luck, Mama," she called. Rachel waved, then stood in the hallway for a long moment, fighting tears. Her daughter was in a good place, a safe place, with trained professionals and other children and a playground with swings. It was more than she'd ever hoped for. She made it to Mirror Development with 15 minutes to spare. Jennifer was waiting in the lobby. "Good morning," Jen said brightly. "Ready for your first day?" "Ready," Rachel said, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. Jen walked her through the building, introducing her to people whose names Rachel immediately forgot. Everyone was kind, professional. No one looked at her like she didn't belong. Her desk was in a shared office space with 3 other property managers. It had a computer, a phone, a filing system, and a nameplate that said, "Rachel Martinez." "Wait, Martinez?" Rachel said, confused. "That's not my last name." Jen laughed. "Sorry, that's my nameplate. Got confused in the move. Your name is Thompson, right?" "Yes, Rachel Thompson. I'll get that fixed today. In the meantime, let me show you the systems." The first day was overwhelming. So many systems, so many procedures, tenant databases and work order software and communication protocols. Rachel took notes frantically, terrified she'd forget something crucial. But Jen was patient. When Rachel asked questions, Jen answered without making her feel stupid. When Rachel made mistakes, and she made several, Jen corrected her kindly. "It's your first day," Jen kept saying. "You're not supposed to know everything. You're supposed to learn." At noon, Rachel excused herself to go have lunch with Sophie. She found her daughter in the playroom, building a tower with blocks alongside 2 other children. "Mama!" Sophie jumped up and ran to her. "I made a friend. Her name is Lily and she has a dog named Biscuit." Rachel knelt and hugged her daughter. "That's wonderful, baby. Are you having fun?" "So much fun. We played on the swings, and Miss Amy read us a story about a caterpillar, and we had crackers with cheese." Sophie was glowing, actually glowing with happiness. Rachel felt something loosen in her chest. A tension she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it was there. They ate lunch together, sandwiches Rachel had packed, and Sophie chatted about everything she'd done that morning. When it was time to go back to work, Sophie hugged her tightly. "See you at 5?" Sophie asked. "See you at 5, Rachel promised. The afternoon was more of the same, learning, questions, small victories and mistakes. By the time 4:30 rolled around, Rachel's brain felt full to bursting. But she'd done it. She'd made it through her first day. She collected Sophie from the childcare center and they walked to the bus stop together, hand in hand. "How was your first day, Mama?" Sophie asked. "Hard," Rachel admitted, "but good. How was yours?" "The best day ever," Sophie said. "Can I go back tomorrow?" Rachel laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, baby, you can go back tomorrow." That night, after Sophie was asleep, Rachel sat at their tiny kitchen table and looked at the new business card Jen had given her. Rachel Thompson, Property Management Administrator, Mira Development Group. She ran her fingers over the raised letters. For the first time in 3 years, she wasn't someone's cleaning lady. She was someone with a title, with business cards, with a desk and a computer, and colleagues who treated her like she mattered. Rachel set the card on the table and let herself cry, not from sadness or stress, but from relief so profound it felt physical. They were going to be okay. Not perfect, not solved, but okay. And okay felt like a miracle. 3 weeks later, Daniel kept his promise. Thursday evening, 6 p.m., he walked into the same cafe where he'd first seen Sophie. He ordered his usual coffee and sat at the table by the window. He wasn't sure if Rachel would come. He'd texted her earlier in the day, "Coffee tonight, same place we met. Would love to hear how things are going." She'd responded, "Sophie has been asking about you. We'll be there." At 6:15, the cafe door opened and Rachel walked in with Sophie. They looked different. Rachel was wearing jeans and a sweater, casual but clean and well-fitting. Her hair was down and there was color in her cheeks. She looked rested in a way she hadn't 3 weeks ago. And Sophie was wearing a bright yellow jacket that actually fit, pink boots, and was clutching what appeared to be a drawing. "Daniel!" Sophie shouted, then caught herself. "Hi, Daniel." Daniel stood and grinned. "Hi, Sophie." "Hi, Rachel." "Hi," Rachel said, smiling shyly. "Thanks for the invitation." They sat together, and Daniel ordered hot chocolates for Sophie and Rachel. "Extra marshmallows," Sophie reminded him. "Extra marshmallows," Daniel confirmed. When the drinks arrived, Sophie carefully pulled out her drawing and spread it on the table. "I made this for you," she said. "It's us. See? That's you, and that's me, and that's Mama, and we're at the cafe. And we're smiling because we're friends." The drawing was done in crayon, 3 stick figures with huge smiles, standing in front of a building labeled Cafe in wobbly letters. Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Sophie, this is beautiful," he said. "Can I keep it?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "It's yours. You can put it in your office." "I will," Daniel promised, "right on my desk where everyone can see it." Rachel watched the exchange with soft eyes. "But how's the job going?" Daniel asked her. "It's good," Rachel said. "Really good. It's still hard. There's so much to learn. But Jen is patient, and my co-workers are helpful, and I'm getting better every day. She's the fastest learner I've ever seen," Jen had told Daniel earlier that week. "And the tenants love her. She has this way of making people feel heard." "That's wonderful," Daniel said. "And Sophie loves the childcare center," Rachel continued. "She talks about it non-stop. Her teachers, her friends, the playground. It's like watching her become a different child." "Not different," Sophie interjected, "just happier." Rachel laughed and ruffled her daughter's hair. "You're right, baby, just happier." They talked for an hour. Rachel told him about her first big success, solving a complicated tenant dispute that had been dragging on for months. Sophie told him about learning to pump her legs on the swings and going higher than ever before, and Daniel told them about reconnecting with his sister. "We had coffee last Saturday," he said. "First real conversation we've had in 2 years." "That's wonderful," Rachel said. "What changed?" Daniel glanced at Sophie, who was drinking her hot chocolate and watching them with her usual careful attention. "Oh, I met someone who reminded me that people matter more than pride," he said. "And that family is worth fighting for." Rachel understood what he wasn't saying. "I'm glad," she said softly. As the evening wound down and Sophie started yawning, Rachel pulled out her wallet to pay for the hot chocolates. "Please," she said, "you've done so much." Let me get this. Daniel shook his head. Next time? I insist. Rachel smiled. Next time, then. As they stood to leave, Rachel hesitated. Daniel, can I tell you something? Of course. That night, the night you found Sophie outside, I was so angry with myself. I kept thinking about all the things that could have gone wrong, all the ways I was failing her, and I was terrified that someone would see and call CPS and take her away from me. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But instead, you saw, and you didn't call anyone to report me. You didn't judge me. You just helped. And I need you to know that you didn't just change our circumstances. You changed how I see myself. You made me believe I deserved better, that we deserved better. Daniel's eyes stung. You always deserved better, he said. I'm just glad I could help you see that. Rachel hugged him then, quick and tight before pulling back, embarrassed. Sorry, she said. I'm not usually a hugger. Don't apologize, Daniel said. And Rachel, if you ever need anything, advice, help, or just someone to talk to, call me. Okay? This doesn't end just because you have the job now. I meant it when I said I wanted to help. Rachel nodded, eyes bright with tears. Sophie hugged Daniel's legs one more time. See you next Thursday? She asked hopefully. Daniel looked at Rachel, who nodded. See you next Thursday, he confirmed. As they walked out into the night, Rachel's hand in Sophie's, both of them smiling, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Not the hollow achievement of career success, not the empty satisfaction of checking boxes. Real purpose. The kind that came from connecting with people, from showing up, from caring. He pulled out his phone and looked at the drawing Sophie had made, now photographed and saved. 3 stick figures smiling. Friends. He made it his phone background, right there in the cafe. Then he sat back down, ordered another coffee, and looked out the window at the street where he'd almost walked past a little girl in the cold. Almost. But he hadn't. And that choice, that one moment of paying attention instead of looking away, had changed 3 lives. His, Rachel's, Sophie's. Daniel pulled out his phone and texted his sister. Dinner next week. I want you to meet some people who changed my life. Sarah responded immediately. I'd love that. And Danny, I'm proud of you. Daniel smiled and looked back out the window. The city continued its endless motion. People passing, cars driving, the world spinning on. But somewhere in that chaos, Sophie was going home to an apartment that would soon be better. Rachel was planning a future that felt possible. And Daniel was learning that the best version of himself wasn't the one who had everything figured out. It was the one who stopped long enough to notice. The new apartment had a playground, not just a playground, a good one, with swings and slides and monkey bars and a sandbox that Sophie had immediately claimed as her kingdom. Rachel stood at the window of their 2-bedroom apartment. 2 bedrooms. Sophie had her own room now, and watched her daughter play with a group of other children. Sophie's laugh carried up to the 3rd floor, bright and unrestrained. Rachel smiled and turned back to the kitchen where she was making dinner, real dinner from scratch, because they could afford groceries now beyond just the basics. The apartment was small but clean. The heat worked. There were no mice. The neighbors were quiet. It felt like a palace. Rachel had been promoted 2 months ago from administrator to assistant property manager. The raise wasn't huge, but it was enough. Enough to afford this place. Enough to buy Sophie new clothes when she needed them, not just when the old ones fell apart. Enough to start saving. Saving. What a concept. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Thursday night, still work. Sarah wants to come too. Says Sophie promised to show her the butterfly collection. Rachel smiled and typed back, perfect. See you at 6. Thursday night dinners had become a tradition. Sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at Daniel's place. Once at Rachel's new apartment, where Sophie had insisted on giving everyone a tour. Daniel and his sister Sarah had reconciled fully. Sarah adored Sophie, who reminded her of her own daughter at that age. The four of them, sometimes five when Sarah's daughter came, had formed an unlikely little family, not related by blood, just by choice. Rachel heard the apartment door open. "Mama, Mama!" Guess what? Sophie burst into the kitchen, cheeks flushed from playing, eyes bright. "What, baby?" "I can do the monkey bars all the way across, by myself, without anyone helping." "That's amazing." Rachel scooped her up and spun her around, making Sophie shriek with laughter. When she set her down, Sophie grabbed her hand. "Mama, are you happy?" she asked suddenly. Rachel crouched down to her daughter's level. "I'm very happy, sweetheart." "Are you?" Sophie nodded seriously. "I'm the happiest I've ever been. We have a nice home and I have friends and you don't have to work at night anymore. And I have my own room with the butterfly poster Daniel got me and—" She paused for breath. "And people notice us now." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah, baby, they do." "Do you think we'll always be this happy?" Sophie asked. Rachel thought about how to answer that. About the reality that life was complicated and things changed and happiness wasn't a permanent state. But looking at her daughter's hopeful face, she decided truth could wait. "I think we'll always try to be this happy," Rachel said. "And I think we'll always have each other and people who care about us, and that's what matters most." Sophie hugged her tight. "I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby. More than anything in the world." That night, after Sophie was asleep in her own bed, in her own room, Rachel sat on her couch. They had a couch now, second-hand but comfortable, and thought about the past 6 months. She thought about how close they'd come to disaster. How many nights Sophie had stood in the cold, waiting. How many times Rachel had cried in the bathroom at work, terrified that one mistake would cost them everything. She thought about the stranger who could have walked past but didn't. Daniel insisted he wasn't a hero, that he'd just done what anyone should do. But Rachel knew better. Most people didn't stop. Most people looked away. Daniel had looked, had seen, had cared enough to act. And that action had rippled outward in ways he probably didn't even understand. Rachel pulled out her phone and opened a new message to Daniel. "Thank you for everything. For seeing Sophie when everyone else walked past. For giving me a chance. For believing we deserved better. You changed our lives. I hope you know that." She hesitated, then added, "And I hope you know your family now. Not just someone who helped us. Family." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came quickly. "Your family to me too. Both of you. See you Thursday. D." Tomorrow, she'd go to work. She'd solve tenant problems and coordinate with contractors and prove that she deserved the promotion they'd given her. Tomorrow, Sophie would go to the childcare center and play with her friends and learn new things and build her butterfly collection. Tomorrow, Daniel would probably text with some joke or question or just to check in, because that's what family did. Tomorrow would bring challenges and uncertainties and probably a few problems. But for tonight, in this moment, they were safe, they were seen, they were home, and that was enough. If you're reading this, you made it all the way through. Thank you. This story isn't just about Daniel and Rachel and Sophie. It's about all of us. How many times have we walked past someone who needed help because we were late, tired, distracted, or convinced it wasn't our responsibility? How many times have we been the person waiting in the cold, hoping someone would notice? We live in a world that tells us to keep our heads down, mind our business, stay in our lane, a world that makes caring feel optional instead of essential. But here's the truth. We need each other. The single mother working 3 jobs needs someone to see her struggle and offer a better option. The lonely kid needs someone to stop and listen. The person who's been invisible for so long, they've forgotten what it feels like to matter. They need someone to prove they're wrong. And maybe you need to be that someone, not because you're a hero, not because you have all the answers, but because you're human. And humans are designed to care for each other. Sometimes all it takes is a cup of hot chocolate, a kind word, a moment of genuine attention. Sometimes all it takes is proving to someone that they matter. Because they do, you do, we all do. And in a world that moves too fast, the most revolutionary thing you can do is slow down long enough to see someone, really see them. The way Daniel saw Sophie, the way someone once saw you, or should have, or could have. Be that person for someone else. Notice, stop, care. That's how we change the world, one moment of compassion at a time. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Think about who in your life might be waiting in the cold, metaphorically or literally. Then reach out, show up, notice them. Because the next Sophie isn't a character in a story. She's real. She's out there right now, waiting. And she's hoping someone like you will finally stop and see her. Be that someone. The world needs more Daniels. Be one.